He demanded to return all the gifts he had ever given to me and the children, as if you could put a price on our lives. I knew that the upcoming confrontation would turn his world upside down, revealing a truth he had diligently ignored. He sat across from me, the embodiment of confidence and predatory power, a flawless gray suit, perfect haircut, and that characteristic gesture. When he was thinking, he would slightly touch his temple with his forefinger, as if turning an invisible key in his calculations. Next to him was Linda, 10 years younger than both of us, with a phone in her hand and a barely noticeable supercilious smile. She didn't look up at me, pretending to be completely absorbed in her smartphone screen, only occasionally sneaking glances to assess my state. The courtroom seemed to me like a theatrical stage where we all played pre-assigned roles. I was the abandoned wife. He was the stern yet businesslike husband. She was the triumphant rival. Everyone, except my lawyer, seemed to have already placed bets on the outcome of this drama. So, you insist on the return of all gifts given to your wife and children during the marriage? The judge reiterated with undisguised astonishment. Exactly. John adjusted his tie knot. All items worth over $5,000 must be returned. They are my property, loaned for temporary use. Temporary use? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. You're claiming that birthday and anniversary gifts to your wife weren't really gifts. The woman is no longer with me. Why would she need my things? He didn't even change his tone, as if discussing the most obvious. Silence fell for a moment. I saw the judge lower her gaze to the papers, trying to hide her puzzled state. Suddenly, I felt sorry for her. It's not every day one encounters a case where a man demands the return of earrings given for his daughter's birth. Your position, Mrs. Smith? The judge addressed me. My voice, even to myself, sounded unexpectedly calm. I will return everything down to the last item. John smiled victoriously and looked at Linda, but she suddenly tensed. Something in my voice alerted her. She had always been sensitive to intonations, something I knew since she used to visit us as a junior colleague seeking career guidance. All right, the judge nodded. In that case, please provide a complete inventory of the items to be returned. From there, I almost stopped listening, watching John, his hands making smooth gestures to emphasize his words. Those same hands once put a ring on my finger, stroked Lynn's head when she was just a tiny child, and rocked the cradle for Leslie. They think I've lost, flashed through my mind. Let them think. The main thing is not to make a single unnecessary move. When the session ended and we were leaving the hall, John passed me at the door, demonstratively not holding it for me. Linda walked behind him like a loyal shadow. Are you okay? My lawyer asked quietly. More than okay, I replied with a slight smile. He didn't understand that he had opened Pandora's box. Now just my apartment, technically my parents' apartment, greeted me with silence. The children were at their grandmother's. I had deliberately sent them there for the weekend. What I was about to do required solitude and absolute concentration. I went to the bedroom and opened the top drawer of the dresser. There lay the jewelry box, the topaz earrings he had given me after the first unexpected business trip with Linda. Back then, I still pretended to believe in their professional relationship. I returned the earrings and placed them on the bed, took out stickers from the desk, and wrote on one of them in neat handwriting. Gifted on March 15th, 2020, after 2 weeks of ignoring and your apologies for overly close work relations with Linda. I walked around the apartment with slow, methodical steps, stopping at each item that could be considered a gift. a gold bracelet from the first director's salary. The sticker got a date and the phrase, "That evening you refused to go to Lynn's school concert, saying it was a pointless waste of time." The living room TV, bought after you missed our anniversary. Lynn's tablet, expensive with drawing functions, gifted to the son to compensate for your constant absence at his competitions. Leslie's dollhouse, purchased after a week of your silence due to my refusal to sign over my mother's cottage to you. Each thing, each item turned into a point on the map of our crumbling marriage. I walked around the apartment, reliving the past 5 years. Years when I already knew everything was falling apart between us, but desperately clung to the semblance of a family. By the end of the day, the bed was filled with stuff: jewelry, electronics, furnishings. I even took down the big painting he brought back from a business trip off the wall. I wrote on the sticker, "That day you said I could never appreciate art because I work with numbers, not beauty." In the evening, the children came back. Leslie was the first to notice the items arranged on the bed. "Mom, what is this? Are we moving?" Fear filled her voice. "No, sweetheart, I'm just doing a bit of cleaning." I tried to smile. Why does the tablet have a sticker about Dad? Lynn stood at my bedroom door, holding a sticker in his hand. I froze. My smart, overly observant son. "Are you gathering everything to give back to Dad?" His voice was calm, but I saw a storm in his eyes. "Lynn, some things are hard to explain." "I'm not a child, Mom. I understand everything." He straightened up, suddenly resembling his father. "He demanded everything back." "Yes." I nodded. Leslie came closer and hugged me around the waist. "Do I have to give back my dollhouse too?" she asked quietly. "Dad said all expensive gifts need to be returned." I tried to speak evenly, not revealing my emotions. "But why?" Leslie started to sob. Lynn suddenly turned abruptly and left the room. A minute later, I heard the door to his room slam. That night, I couldn't sleep for long. Through the wall, I heard Lynn typing something on the computer quickly, furiously. Leslie was also awake. I went to her room twice to calm her after nightmares. In the morning, when the children left for school, I continued my inventory. In a shoebox, I placed all the receipts I had kept for years, not knowing why. In a separate envelope, bank statements for loans John presented as solely his burden, although we paid them together. I even found an old flash drive with videos of our family celebrations, moments where he didn't shy away from the camera, made sharp remarks to me, or completely ignored the children. Once he even declared right in front of guests, "I don't understand why we celebrate a 9-year-old's birthday. It's not an achievement, just surviving another year." As I took out his last gifts from the closet, my gaze fell on a stuffed bear I bought for Leslie when she was very sick, and an old photo album I had been compiling since the kids' first days. I set them aside and quietly said to myself, "These are not from him. They are from me, and stay with us." The courier arrived at 10:20 a.m. A young man in a blue uniform with the delivery company's logo. Looking at the pile of boxes in the hallway, he scratched his head puzzledly. "Center address, 3rd floor, no elevator?" he asked, verifying the order on his tablet. "That's correct." I signed the last waybill. "But please be careful. Inside are fragile memories." I watched from the window as he loaded the boxes into the van. I knew I was doing the right thing, that it was necessary not for revenge, but for final liberation. At the last moment, I added an unmarked flash drive to one of the boxes. On it were our family videos, where smiles hid real drama. His contemptuous comments, my silent patience, the children's bewildered glances. In another box, I included an envelope with a neutral inscription, for information purposes. Inside were copies of all bank statements and payments for his personal loans. As the van disappeared around the corner, I returned to the unusually empty apartment. The walls had bright rectangles from the removed paintings. The shelves were half empty. I suddenly remembered how once, during a quarrel, John threw in my face, "You create nothing. Everything we have is mine. I earned it. I bought it. I gifted it." Back then, I stayed silent. But it was at that moment I began collecting my nothing, documents, recordings, evidence that our family was built not on his generosity, but on my silent servitude. The sound of the opening front door jerked me out of my thoughts. The children returned from school earlier than usual. "Mom, where's the TV?" Leslie asked in surprise, looking into the living room. "And the paintings?" Lynn slowly scanned the empty walls. They stood in the middle of the room, bewildered, as if they had entered a stranger's apartment. I didn't know how to explain to them what had happened without blaming their father. "Remember, we talked yesterday about the things that need to be returned to Dad?" I said as calmly as possible. "They were taken away today. Everything taken away." Leslie's eyes filled with tears. "Not everything, sweetheart. Only what Daddy considers his." Lynn stood silently, fists clenched in his pockets, his face frozen, just like mine when I tried to hide the pain. "Come here." I sat on the sofa and patted the seats next to me. Leslie immediately snuggled up to me, and Lynn reluctantly sat down beside me, maintaining a distance. "Sometimes in life, we must let go of something to move forward," I began, gently stroking my daughter's hair. "Sometimes the past needs to be returned to whoever it belongs to." "But I don't want to return the dollhouse," Leslie sniffed. "I know, darling, but we have something much more important than all these things." I got up and went to the bookshelf. On the bottom shelf, behind the textbooks, lay an old stuffed bear and a photo album with a worn cover. "Here," I handed them to the children. "Not from Dad. They're from me, and they stay with us." Leslie carefully took the bear, and Lynn opened the album, flipping through pages of our photos from long ago, before all the problems. "Dad's not in them," he noted. "He's there." I pointed to several pictures where John was standing next to us. "He was always just a bit on the sidelines." Lynn closed the album and unexpectedly hugged me tightly. "I'm glad they took those things," he whispered into my shoulder. "They were never real anyway." John returned home earlier than usual. The courier had called to inform him about the delivery. Linda was already there, pacing nervously around the living room. "Why did she send so much junk?" she snapped irritably, watching as John opened the first box. "She could have just returned the valuable stuff instead of staging this circus." John didn't respond. He methodically unpacked the items, laying them out on the table like trophies after a successful hunt. Expensive wristwatches he had gifted himself on their 10th anniversary, a leather briefcase bought after a particularly profitable deal, a gold bracelet given to Mary after the first major argument over Linda. "Look, she even kept the tags on," he chuckled, showing his partner the neatly attached stickers. Linda picked one up and read it aloud. "Given for Lynn's birthday, which you didn't attend because you were dining with business partners." She frowned. "What's this nonsense? Why did she write that?" "She's losing it, probably," John shrugged, continuing to sort through the items. "Women like to dramatize?" But as the boxes emptied and the pile of items with attached notes grew, John's face became increasingly tense. Each sticker recorded an exact date and the circumstances under which the gift had been given. Each note was a silent accusation. Bought after a night you didn't come home and didn't answer your calls. Given to make up for a vacation you canceled due to urgent business. Presented with apologies for missing Leslie's school play. Linda crumpled one of the notes nervously in her fist. She's doing this on purpose, right? Trying to make me jealous of your past. Don't be ridiculous, John snapped back. But there was a hint of unease in his voice. In the last box, he found the unmarked flash drive and the envelope labeled for review. For some reason, these two items filled him with a vague sense of dread. What's in there? Linda peeked over his shoulder. Let's see. He inserted the flash drive into the laptop. On the screen appeared family videos, seemingly ordinary at first. Birthdays, vacations at the sea, New Year's celebrations. But the longer they watched, the more clearly the reality of their past life emerged. Not the one John was used to telling, but the true one. There he was, boasting about a new car in front of guests, completely ignoring Lynn, who was trying to show him his drawing. There he was, scolding Mary for a poorly cooked dinner. There he was, brushing off Leslie, who was calling him to see her dance. Turn it off, Linda suddenly demanded. This is nonsense. But John continued to watch, mesmerized. He didn't remember these episodes, or rather, remembered them quite differently. In his version, he was always the generous and caring father and husband who was underappreciated. With a heavy sigh, he opened the envelope marked for review. Inside were copies of bank statements, credit payment receipts, and family budget calculations, all meticulously classified with highlighted amounts and comments. What are these documents? Linda asked, peeking over his shoulder. John remained silent, leafing through the pages. Mary had paid most of those loans she was so often blamed for by John herself, from her modest accountant's salary. Those so-called man's expenses he constantly spoke of turned out to be only a small part of the total costs. It's accounting, he finally muttered. So what? Linda asked impatiently. Nothing. He closed the folder. Linda approached the table where the returned items lay and picked up the topaz earrings. These we can keep. They're beautiful. John didn't respond. He stared at the heap of items he had demanded back. Each item now seemed a testament against him. Each gift became evidence of his shortcomings as a husband and a father. What's wrong with you? Linda touched his shoulder. You're acting strange today. She turned everything upside down, he muttered. I demanded my things back, and she returned my actions to me. What are you talking about? Linda nervously laughed. It's just a psychological trick. She wants you to feel guilty. Don't fall for it. But it was too late. John already realized that Mary hadn't just returned the gifts. She had forced him to face the truth. The phone rang as I was putting Leslie to bed. An unfamiliar number on the screen made me wary. I stepped out into the hallway, closing the bedroom door behind me. Hello? It's Linda. Her voice sounded calm, but there was a nervous undertone. Please don't hang up. I stayed silent, unsure how to respond. The last thing I expected was a call from her. You won, she continued after a pause. John has been like a shadow since the delivery, not talking, sorting through the documents, watching the videos on loop. Are you satisfied? I wasn't playing to win. My voice sounded quieter than I intended. I was just setting myself free. From what? There was an unexpected sincerity in her tone. From the pretense of a good life, from a supposedly supportive husband, from lies. I leaned against the wall. From the daily guilt, from the constant feeling that I owe someone who destroyed our marriage. Linda sighed softly into the phone. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out suddenly. 2 months. He doesn't know yet. The news should have cut me, but strangely, I felt only exhaustion. "Congratulations," I replied without irony. "Does it mean anything to you?" "What?" She faltered at the unexpected question. "This child, this pregnancy, is it a joy or a tool?" There was a long silence. I could only hear her breathing. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I used to think I knew, but now you've seen the real John. It's not about him." Linda's voice suddenly gained confidence. "It's about me, about who I become when I'm with him." I closed my eyes, trying to manage the unexpected wave of sympathy for this woman. 3 years ago, I hated her. 2 years ago, I despised her. Now I almost pitied her. Late at night, another call came. This time it was John. "Let me speak to the kids," he demanded without greeting. "It's 11:30, I replied calmly. "Leslie is asleep. Lynn is studying." "Wake them! I have the right." His voice held the same possessiveness that once seemed to me like strength. "No, John. Rights are defined not only by law, but also by relationships, and relationships are built not on demands, but on respect." "Don't lecture me," he almost shouted. "You ruined my day with your stupid notes and those papers." "I simply returned the truth to you, as you requested. Everything to the last thing." He breathed heavily into the phone. "You intentionally embarrassed me in front of Linda. Set me up." "I wrote only what was true on those damn stickers," I interrupted him. "Nothing more." After hanging up the phone, I opened my laptop and found an old recording. The day of Lynn's 8th birthday. A little serious boy blows out the candles on the cake and suddenly says to the camera, "Dad always promises and forgets. Mom, just don't change." I cried watching this moment, but for the first time in many years, they were not tears of bitterness. Almost a month passed. Life gradually took on a new direction. The kids and I adjusted to the space without the clutter. It turned out to be cozier than I had expected. Lynn smiled more often. Leslie woke up less frequently at night, and I finally stopped apologizing automatically for every word and action. When the doorbell rang in the apartment, it took me a moment to realize it was the door. We had so few visitors lately. Standing there was John, unusually humble, with a bouquet of white roses and an uncertain smile. "Hi." He took a step forward. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him into the hallway. He looked around as if trying to gauge how the apartment, where he had once been the master, had changed. "Are the kids home?" he asked, handing me the bouquet. "Lynn is at practice. Leslie is at a friend's. They'll be back in an hour." John nodded, went into the living room, and sat on the sofa in the very spot where he used to sit when watching TV. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked out of courtesy. "No, thank you." He straightened up and looked me straight in the eye. "Mary, I realized a lot this past month. I was wrong in many ways." I remained silent, not wanting to make it easier for him. "I want to come back," he finally said. "To the kids. Everything will be different. I promise." "And Linda?" He winced as if from a toothache. We broke up. It was a mistake from the start. I walked to the window, looking out onto the street. A thought flickered through my mind. Earlier, I might have been happy or at least felt satisfied. Now nothing. John, I turned to him, you will enter this apartment only as a witness. Today, the documents are being signed. What documents? He frowned. I'm officially transferring my share of the apartment to the children. We've already settled this with your lawyer. He froze, slowly grasping the meaning of my words. But you can't do that without my... I can, I interrupted calmly. And I will today. John stood up, clenching his fists. This is vindictiveness. You want to take the last thing from me. No, John. I want to protect the children, to ensure they have a place to live when you next decide to take everything back. He wanted to argue, but the doorbell interrupted us. The notary had arrived, a punctual man in a formal suit. He efficiently laid out the papers on the table and asked for our passports. John looked petrified, watching me sign document after document. His hands trembled slightly, just like mine used to tremble at every one of his outbursts. When the notary left, John suddenly walked over to the hallway closet and opened it. There stood a box labeled, "Yours, but no longer needed." "What's this?" he asked, as if hesitant to touch it. "Open it," I suggested. Inside was the receipt for an expensive diamond necklace he had given me last New Year's. The necklace I never wore. "Why?" he asked quietly, looking at the receipt. "Because it was a prize for my silence, and I no longer want to be silent," I shrugged. "Don't worry, I didn't throw it away. I just returned it to the store." The front door opened and Lynn walked in. Seeing his father, he froze on the threshold, gripping his sports bag more tightly. "Hello, son," John started, but Lynn walked past him toward his room. He only stopped briefly by me and quietly asked, "Mom, can we throw out this junk?" He nodded toward the box in John's hands. "No, don't throw it out." I smiled at him. "It's our shield." Half an hour later, John left, quietly, without the usual slamming doors and loud statements. In his eyes, I saw something new. Understanding. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he faced a situation he couldn't control or buy. In the evening, the kids and I gathered in the kitchen. I brewed tea, Leslie laid out cookies, and Lynn set up the new speakers, inexpensive but good ones we bought together last week. I hugged them both, feeling the last tension melt away. He asked to have everything returned. I returned it, but not in the way he expected. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.